We've seen 5 massive wildfires in Yosemite, Laysan, Jasper, and the North Cascades. We've seen 3 100-year floods in Death Valley, Yellowstone, and the Smokies. And we had floods in Asheville and in the North Cascades. So like just off the top of my head, there are a number of different climate incidences we've had over the last 12 months. That's specifically in the USA alone. I haven't touched on Canada. I haven't touched on Central America. I haven't touched on South America. And when I start breaking that down from a business point of view for us, that's almost like $1 million of impact in tourism components.
I'm Meg Carney, an outdoor and environmental journalist, and this is the Outdoor Minimalist podcast. Thank you for joining us so that together we can create a better outdoor space as we recreate. We've discussed the many issues with travel on this show before, and while travel is never really quote-unquote good for the environment, that doesn't mean that we should never do it. Instead, I believe that we as travelers can and should find better, more environmentally friendly ways to travel, and that the travel industry has the responsibility of leading the way. That's why in episode 186 of the Outdoor Minimalist podcast, we're looking at one of the biggest challenges that faces the adventure travel industry: climate change. If you spent any time on the trail, paddling rivers, or exploring wild places, you've probably noticed that things have changed a lot, even in the last 5 years. And they're changing really fast. From record-breaking heat waves to trail closures due to wildfires and floods, the landscapes we love are under immense pressure. But while it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the challenges, there is a growing movement within the travel industry to do better, to adapt, give back, and rethink what it means to adventure responsibly in a changing climate. To help unpack this, I'm joined by Leigh Barnes. Leigh serves as the president of the Americas for Intrepid Travel, a world leader in responsible travel for 35 years. The company's mission is to create positive change through the joy of travel, which comes to life on more than 900 trips, all designed to truly experience local culture. Based in the Pacific Northwest, Leigh oversees Intrepid's fastest growing region globally. Leigh has been instrumental in embedding purpose into the company's product, storytelling, and brand, from launching First Nations experience in Australia and the US to pioneering industry-first ethical marketing guidelines. So thank you for joining me on the Outdoor Minimalist podcast today. I'm excited to talk about adventure travel a little bit. I know that is a topic that many people participate in that listen to the show. So before we get started, I am curious about what drew you to working in the travel industry and the outdoor industry adjacent.
Well, I think more good luck than good management, Megan, to be honest. I think I love travel. I would travel, all through my 20s, but never with any strategy to go into tourism. It was more just something I love to do with my friends, go in the outdoors, hike, see the world. And then somehow I stumbled into a job at Intrepid 15 years ago at entry level doing Google search and social media. Shows my age, like turning on the social media page and making the Google ads happen for the first time. And next thing you know, I'm working in an adventure travel company, and my life completely changed from that point. I'd been a suit and tie guy, clean shaven. For those that can't see me, I'm not a suit and tie guy. I've got a giant beard. And I think the moment that changed me from it being a job to a lifestyle was I got to hike through the Himalayas and see Everest Base Camp. And from that moment on, my world and my life has been completely different with a new lens on things. And that for me is what has made me so passionate about working in this sector, is moments and experiences like that.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you work with Intrepid Travel. So people who haven't heard of that before, do you mind just doing a brief overview? What are you guys and what is your position with them?
Yeah, so Intrepid Travel is the world's largest adventure tour operator. We have trips in over 100 different locations around the world. Everything from what I just touched on, from hiking the Himalayas in Nepal, to seeing the gorillas in Rwanda, to having a food experience in Vietnam or a cultural tour of Mexico. I've been with that company for 15 years, and my role at the moment is the president of the Americas. So I'm responsible for running the business here in North, Central, and South America.
I certainly wish you were the president of America right now.
I don't know if I do.
I'm just joking. Okay. Okay. So I'm trying to think adventure travel. I personally enjoy travel. I feel like travel is something I wish everyone had the ability to participate in. I think it's very enriching in many different ways. But I want to hear from you because you're in the industry, you have been for some time, about why you think adventure travel is important and why it has a place in our current economy.
Yeah, I think great question. I wish I could ask this one more. You can follow me around and ask me questions all the time. I like this one. But yeah, our company exists to create positive change through the joy of travel. And we believe the world needs more intrepid people. And if you travel and you go out and experience the world, you have a connection, you experience a new culture, you're going to be more curious, you're going to be more connected to the world and have a greater sense of community, and you're going to care. And if we think that happens to more people, the world's going to be a better place. And we think travel has an amazing role to play in getting people outside of their comfort zone, getting people to experience and connect with people to understand their cultures, their belief systems. And nothing does this as fast and as powerfully as travel. And then on the other side too, is when you do travel and you travel from focus on experiences and you travel and adventure, you're getting money into local economies and local communities that need it. So there's two amazing aspects of why I'm so passionate about adventure travel: the change of self that you get to go on, you get to learn and put yourself in other people's shoes and have a great time and have that sense of joy. And two is just the sheer economic power of tourism. The fact that we do go to national parks, that you go and interact with local communities, with First Nations, to go and see different parts of the world. Money is getting directly into these businesses and enabling them to self-determine and decide what they want to do with that dollar. And it's incredibly powerful. So those two reasons are why I love the sector and why I believe there's a place for it.
Wow. You've thought about this clearly before. Okay.
Yeah, I do every day, actually.
I know.
About it all the time. I wake up in a cold sweat sometimes at 2 a.m. thinking about it. So yeah, and it's travel's fun but it can be super impactful. So yeah, why not think about it and focus my life on making it more inclusive so more people can go out and change the world.
I love that. And something about, I mean, no matter where you live or you travel, one thing is bound to impact it, which is climate change.
Yeah.
And that's something that we talk a lot about on the show, especially in relation to how it impacts how we spend time outdoors.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious from your perspective, especially as someone who likely spends a lot of time outside, how have you seen climate change impacting travel destinations? And from your experience, what kind of shifts have you been seeing?
Yeah, look, it's probably been one of the biggest shifts since the pandemic is the actual impact of climate incidences on trips and on running our tours. The current amount of climate related incidences are currently growing at a rate that outpaces our current trip growth and our customer volume growth. So we're seeing more climate incidences occur than we are even the amount of customers going on our style of travel. And that has drastically changed pre-pandemic to today and even year over year. So last year we had 21. This year we've already had 41 climate incidences on our trips. And that's everything from cyclone in Australia, earthquake in Myanmar, landslides in Peru, heat waves, all these sort of things that are happening. And this is something that's drastically happening faster and faster each year. Now, we operate in 100 different countries, so we probably see climate impacts all the time, but the amount of incidences that we're now seeing that are disrupting our trips is growing at a rate that is outstripping our company growth and is getting quite alarming in those. So we've seen about, if I start breaking it down into customer numbers, there's about 700 of our customers over the course of the year that have had their trips interrupted in some way because of the climate impacts. And there's not always, and it's not always in the big ways that you imagine. Yeah. So some of the trips will be impacted or outdoor will be, you can't go on the trip, like if it's a fire or something drastic. But then in cases of extreme heat or floods, you may have part of your trip or holiday completely deviated and able to continue to go on. So what we're seeing is a drastic increase in the impacts on every holiday that we run. But then also too, what we're seeing is having to change our products setup as well. So things that we're doing around that and we're seeing more demand for is obviously more travel in shoulder seasons, where there's less of these areas where you can see climate impacts. So we're seeing a shift in where we're building product and creating outdoor experiences for people. We're also seeing a big shift and a much more interest in cold travel or winter travel and going away from some of those climate events. Doesn't always guarantee that, but a shift from customer demand and then looking at more cold product and doing that. And then we're also changing how we actually build our products as well. So really big increase in the amount of rail, trying to make our own products more sustainable. And we've been removing a number of flights from our products as well internally to try and make sure our products were removing as much carbon intensity as possible. So yeah, at a ground level, more incidents than ever before. And I don't think that's going to slow down.
Yeah, and some of the examples that you gave, they are across the globe, right? I mean, because climate change is everywhere. It's not really isolated to certain areas. The bulk of our listenership is in North America. So I am curious, how have you been seeing natural disasters and weather patterns specifically impact adventure tourism here in the Americas? And I guess you can touch on South America as well then, since you're the president of both. And and like with national parks as well. So
Yeah,
national parks and backcountry spaces, I think would be the most relevant, but if there's other examples, feel free to include them.
yeah. Look, I had a crack at this before the call. And I wrote down a list of just off the top of my head. So but I suppose I hope it shows you it's like a 5-minute exercise and you can start to see the impacts. We've seen 5 massive wildfires in Yosemite, Laysan, Jasper, and the North Cascades. We've seen 3 100-year floods in Death Valley, Yellowstone, and the Smokies. And we had floods in Asheville and in the North Cascades. So like just off the top of my head, there are a number of different climate incidences we've had over the last 12 months. That's specifically in the USA alone. I haven't touched on Canada. I haven't touched on Central America. I haven't touched on South America. And when I start breaking that down from a business point of view for us, that's almost like $1 million of impact in tourism components. So back to your first question about the economic impacts, that's just one tour operator. You know what I mean? If I start to flow on the economic impacts of those incidences to all the community businesses, the other two operations, it's going to be quite powerful economic indicator. And then even things too, you think about these horrific fires and floods in these parts of the world, and you're like, oh, it doesn't matter to me in my day-to-day life because it's just that national park. I don't have to go on holiday there. It doesn't matter. We saw over the last year, wildfires in Vancouver causing smoke disruption in New York City. Yeah, and that's like quite you sort of don't put those two. You see that on TV. I'm on the East Coast. There's an incident happening there. It doesn't going to affect me, but visibly we saw smoke come into New York City. So yeah, we're seeing the USA for the brunt of a lot of climate incidences. And because America is so diverse and has a number of different national parks, there's different types, cyclones, wildfires, floods, and those impacts are not just on the environment, they're impacting people. Yeah, and the national parks has a rich tapestry of people that are living, working, supporting, building economies, businesses, and they're feeling the brunt of it. And these aren't multinationals that are having to deal with some of these impacts, and they're probably not getting the coverage, the news are being spoken about. And if they're unable to have tourists, have Americans come and see and interact because of these climate events, it's going to disproportionately impact their businesses and their livelihoods. And that's one of the things too that we're trying to do as a company. Once these climate incidences do take place, is that we get our tours back and run and make sure that money is getting back into those communities that need it. So I think sometimes too, the way we frame climate incidences in an outdoor sense or in backcountries or national parks, it's like, oh, it's just the climate or it's just the forest. A horrific way to frame it, but it sort of goes out of mind. I think a way you need to also think about it is there's real people with real jobs out in these parts of the world that are getting disproportionately impacted as well. So it is a human issue, not just a environmental one. And I think sometimes we can almost be a little bit blasé that, hey, it's not in my backyard, it's not where I'm going to holiday. But there's real Americans out there that are being impacted by this as well. And they sort of get a little bit forgotten or not covered in the news or spoken about as well. So really important, I think, for all of us is when we do look at our holiday planning and we're trying to see where we go next, have a look at some of the places that may have been impacted by a climate incident. Can we get back there? Can we go support that national park with our dollars? So yeah, it is happening here in the USA. And it is something that, you know, this summer will be interesting to see, because not only do we have the climate impacts, we also going to have impacts for reduction in funding. Yeah, so what's going to happen on the grounds with scheduling, maintenance, cleaning, all these things that ensure that when we do have climate impacts, they're not going to be as, can help mitigate some of these. So I think this summer it could be, a bit of a tinderbox to see what's going to happen with some of these incidences.
Yes. And I mean, if you're listening, that all sounds really bad. So, what can we do about it? I guess, like, are there ways that you as a tour company have been approaching these issues I mean, you can only do so much, right? Because you are using these outdoor spaces that are being impacted by the climate, but you also have a positive impact on the economies in those areas. So, what are some like adaptations that you have had to take in the adventure travel world to respond to these challenges?
Yeah, and I think apologies if I was too doomsday. It's definitely not the narrative. I think for me is like there is always solutions. They're always positive, but you've got to diagnose and understand the issue. And I definitely want to make sure we get leaving people feeling confident about their outdoor spaces. But I think one of them, before I answer the question, is if we want them and we love them, we've got to get out and protect them. Yeah, and we don't have a healthy tourism business or a travel business without a healthy planet. So we're out there trying to make positive change. So I just encourage people, if there is a negative from this, is that the catalyst is to go out and love your national park. Yeah, go out into the outdoors, go for a walk, go pay the entry fee, go take the photos and share it on, because that visibility, that passion, that love will A, create someone else to go to the national park. B, it'll make you happier. You'll feel better. But we need people to start advocating for them and giving them a voice, because we will not have healthy travel industries. We will not have healthy economies around these places if we don't get out and enjoy them. So the solution for one point is go out, celebrate your parks, be in the outdoors. I think, participate is one of the most powerful things you can do. So just by being involved and engaging and having a great holiday and going experiencing outside, whether it's in the Tripwood or not, is the number one thing. Yeah. And I think, that mantra of creating positive change through the joy of travel, go experience and celebrate. Now I can answer your question, Vegan, after that point, because I wanted to make sure I was a little bit more positive. Yeah, we're having to make adaptations all the time. And I think I spoke to a little bit at the start, but there's, common, not probably, just things we have to do. We move more to shoulder seasons to stay away from heat. Yeah, or to move away from some of those extremes. We've had to adjust a lot of our trekking routes, whether it's in the Andes, whether it's in US national parks, Yosemite, etc., whether that's in Greece and Italy, anywhere around the world. We've had to make those adaptations to the actual product. So when we go, what trails we do, how long we spend out on the trail, all of these different aspects are now starting to change in how we do our actual product design. And that is, an ongoing thing that's changing all the time for us. So yeah, that product change is taking place. Then as a company, for our philosophy here is very much when we think about our purpose and sustainability and responsible business practices. One, we have positive impacts. How do we amplify those? So positive impacts, money into local economies, community engagement. How do we do more of that? Two, negative impact, the impact we have on the planet. So what do we do as a company to mitigate that and ensure we remove as many harmful components of our business as possible? And then three, we advocate like crazy for the positive change we want to see in the world. So by taking that lens on it, we start to see how we need to adapt and change. And from a climate point of view, we do a number of different projects, to help minimize our negative impact. One of the big ones we do is we have a reforestation project with an organization called Eden Reforestation. That's largely done in Southeast Asia. So in Indonesia, Nepal, and Madagascar, we've planted over 1.3 million trees and trying to make sure we're having a positive impact around it. We've also been carbon neutral since 2010, buying carbon credits and making that. And then we're also doing everything we can to reduce the carbon intensity of our trips. And that's things like removing unnecessary flights, prioritizing train travel, disproportionately using local transport where we can, and ensuring the carbon intensity of those trips is being lowered. So I think I've answered your question, but I may have done it in three different ways, Megan. So hopefully I've got the point across. I answered the question the way it is useful to you.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's interesting because your product is kind of like an experience,
Yeah.
right? And so I think a lot of the companies that we talk to on this show, they produce a physical item like a sweatshirt, a tent, etc. And sometimes I think as a consumer, it is hard to say that, yeah, adventure travel has this specific sort of impact on the climate and this specific sustainability impact. And one episode that we did previously, I don't know when it was, but it was about travel and whether or not it could be sustainable. So, from your perspective, because you are such a large travel company, do you think that travel is sustainable and do you think it can be sustainable?
Yeah, it's something that we grapple with all the time. You know, our vision is to be the best travel company for the world, and at our leadership meetings, we grapple with this. And I think the way we answer it, and again, this is not going to be perfect for everyone, is that we believe if we didn't exist, travel would be worse off, and there would be worse options. Now, we believe we're getting better all the time, and our trips are doing everything they can to minimize their impact on the planet. Being a human, we have an impact on the planet. Yeah, and I think there needs to be some pragmatism around that particular component. But I guarantee you, when you go on our trips, we're doing everything we can to support the communities and mitigate the environmental impact. Is that perfect? No. I don't think we can ever get anything to say that it's positive for the planet. And I don't want to be getting up here being a charlatan claiming that. But our style of travel is going to ensure that money gets into local economies, you're eating local foods, you're understanding and being more curious, and that we are, as a company, doing everything we can to remove the negative impacts we may have on the planet. And I think it's not the right question. I would say, is there better ways for us to travel? And I would say yes. How do we as Intrepid keep pioneering and making them? And how do we get more people to travel better and more sustainably? That is, I think, a better focus for us as a company in the industry, because you end up in people not doing anything, or you end up, on a scale of like, oh, what's better or worse, and not actually focusing on the impact you can have. So I think we need to focus on how we can travel better. And hopefully one day, just like, other companies are maybe trying to get to Mars, that's great for them. Hopefully at some point in 100 years, our company can say that travel is sustainable with us and it's positive. But I don't think right now that's possible.
Yeah, I love that reframing because it does make it more approachable and, like you said, easier to take action then to actually improve things because yes, everything can always be improved in some capacity. And I mean, you are just one company in a very large industry.
Yeah.
And from your perspective, do you think that there are areas where the travel industry needs to change and adapt to lower its impact and maybe adapt more to climate change? Because you've overviewed many of the steps that you've taken. Are you seeing this as like a broader trend, or is it something that you wish more companies were doing?
I think it was a broader trend. It slowed, particularly here in the USA. I think Europe's still progressing much faster. I think it was really picking up steam in the lead up just before the pandemic. And I think it was almost becoming the norm. I think that handbrake has gone on over the last 12 to 18 months. I think there's two areas I'd love to see all companies get better at. One is, as a travel company or any tour operator, if the communities you're going to see don't want you there, we end up in a very dangerous place. Yeah. And I think that all travelers and all tourism companies need to think about their end experience and does the community want you there, and how can we be better listening, engaging with the communities and places we're traveling to ensure that when we do travel there, the experience is great, not just for you, but for the people that live there. So I think that's one thing. And I know I've sort of gone back and forth on this people and planet thing, but like, I do think that's so important. Yeah. Because, if you think about the long string effect of that, if you're coming there and they're wanting you there, and why you're coming there is because of like the environmental components of that place, that community is going to do everything they can to protect that place. One of the great examples I've seen has been in Victoria. Is about how they've gone from focusing on promoting their orcas to having feeding programs. Yeah, to make sure the orcas are healthy and sustained, because people want to go there to see the orcas, and that shift in narrative, that community wants tourists. And one of the ways to keep tourists coming is to have healthy orca populations. Now, it's not to say that orca population is not at risk and have issues, but that reframing around, wanting tourists to come and then doing everything to can for those tourists because the community wants it there is quite powerful. So I think businesses that can do that can create different outcomes. The second part on what I'd expect other companies to do from a sustainability, particularly around the climate, is make sure you have an action plan to reduce your impact. Yeah, I just think that if we're doing that, everyone's going to be moving into a better place. But if you're ignoring that, it's just going to create problems, because if we can't travel because of the climate incidences, we don't have travel products. So I just think everyone needs to do those two things. Think about how they can engage in the communities they're traveling and making sure the communities want them there, and then having climate action plans that is reducing the carbon impacts of their business and investing into climate projects.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective of like an overarching, like kind of like business approach, industry approach. Um, and I'm sure some listeners maybe fall into that category, but for the average person that maybe is just participating in this type of travel or just enjoys time outdoors in national parks, whatever it may be, one thing that I personally have had to kind of like take a step back and grapple with is eco anxiety or climate anxiety. So, like, how am I as an individual contributing to this problem? And I think a lot of the things that you have stated can be applied to individual lives. But how do you think that travel and time spent outdoors can actually have more of a sense of empowerment rather than despair?
Great question. I've gone through this, and hopefully I'm at the other side now. I think, Leigh,
Yeah.
I always had like probably similar to you, like that climate anxiety. Should I have children? Should I even have a house? Like, really, like, am I part of the problem? And I think I've probably moved on half more pragmatist. I need to live my life. I need to get, have these things from a pragmatic point of view. But I think the main thing that I've done has been an attitude change. Is, I'm a human. I should go out there and live. I should be outside. I should go experience these things and have the joy of being out in nature. And I think just that fundamental joy of going out there and experiencing, going for a hike, being out in the wild, and realizing that if we don't have these experiences, how can we be happy? And, going out there with a friend or hiking with my wife or showing my daughter a waterfall for the first time, like, these are the things that I remember. Yeah, these are not my, I remember these so much, and it makes me want to protect these places. So I think, the best way to overcome anxiety, and I've had personal anxiety, is normally through action and participation. Go out, go into nature, take your friend, go for a hike, have a tea or a beer, and have a conversation with them afterwards. That is going to be the most powerful thing, because it'll make you feel happier. It'll create connection with another person. And if you love it enough, you'll start to take action to protect it. And that can be your role. But I just wouldn't encourage people to be overconsumed with the anxiety and do nothing. Go out into nature, go see it with a friend, and then whatever comes from the conversations after that, act on them.
Adventuring plans on your calendar? Remember to grab your Lava Linens travel towel on your way out the door. Founded by a mother-daughter team, Lava Linens crafts durable, luxurious travel towels as a more sustainable and better performing alternative to microfiber and cotton towels. Powered by flax, hemp, and tencel, they're designed to be by your side for years to come. Use the code Outdoor Minimalist for 15% off your next order. And to return to kind of what you were saying about how do we travel better? So, I mean, as an individual, are there things that you think we can do to be more sustainable and community conscious when we are traveling, whether it is with a company or a tour group, or if we just take a trip solo or with our friends?
I think it's back to the little thing. I think it's a change of attitude. I think sustainability isn't about being perfect. And for whatever reason, we've put being perfect next to it, maybe because it's to help some conversation when you get caught in political arguments. Nothing is perfect. And I don't know why we put this lens on sustainability more than anything else. So you've got to remove that lens of a perfect holiday, of the perfect purchase, of the perfect carbon off. Like these things don't really exist. So I think it's about, not being perfect, but how do you continually make better choices, just like you do in every other facet of your life? My advice, slow down. Take that holiday a little bit slower, enjoy it more, walk for a little bit longer, slow down, create a deeper connection, have an extra meal somewhere, eat locally, slow it down. Yeah. And just embrace where you're at. Spend a bit more time in place. You're going to reduce the travel components, eat locally, eating locally produced food that's grown as like much minimal carbon inputs from things that's been shipped all over the world. Try and choose locally owned where you can. Yeah, if you can buy from a local community, going back to my first point, it gets that money staying in that community. They normally source stuff locally. Ask better questions. Yeah, read, look, discuss, have that conversation. You might not get it right this time, but from asking that question, next time you're going to be able to make a better and more informed decision. And, just stay curious, ask questions, look up, have that mind shift that it's about being better, not being perfect. And I think if you're able to do that, your holiday is going to be different than mine. So I don't want to prescribe that. But if you're going into it, slowing it down, spending more time in nature, choosing locally owned and being curious, it's going to end up a better experience for you. And your next holiday is going to be a little bit more sustainable.
Yeah. And like you said, it's going to look different for everyone because everyone has different priorities when they're traveling or on vacation. And I guess to kind of close things out, I want to know from you what, if anything, is giving you hope about the future of adventure travel despite the challenges that come from climate change.
What gives me hope is more people are wanting to travel sustainably and are wanting to have experiences. And the more people that travel like this means that it will have less of an impact on the planet and there'll be more curious people driving change into the future. So what gives me hope is more people are moving into this space, are wanting to travel like this. And the next generation of people that are experiencing the outdoors will be smarter than me. They will be more passionate than me and they will go out and make the changes that need to. So that's what gives me hope. And yeah, the more people traveling sustainably and with that lens on having the experience means they're spending less money on owning things. It means they're less money on traveling in other ways. So I think that's what gives me hope.
Is there anything else that you wanted to add that you feel like maybe we missed? Is there anything like really sticking out in your mind?
Look, I probably no. I think that's right. I think if I go on anymore, I'll open a can of Pandora worms for myself, and I'll have to put it back in. But no, I think that's right. That's cool.
Awesome. So if people want to maybe check out Intrepid Travel, just see what you guys have to offer or learn more about your sustainability initiatives, what is the best way to do that?
Best way is to go to intrepidtravel.com or follow us on one of the social channels. Just search Intrepid Travel and you'll find all the details about us. We are completely transparent. So if you want to hunt around and find out more, we have a full integrated report we launch each year. And that's a full transparent look at our business from the financials, our people impact, our impact on the planet, and the actions we're taking to do that. And it also showcases what we haven't got right over the preceding year. We don't have to do that. We're a privately listed company, but we believe transparency is one of the best ways to ensure sustainable actions. So we will release that report once a year and you can find out everything good, bad about Intrepid.
Awesome. I'll be sure to include all those links in the show notes. And we love transparency here. So definitely recommend checking that out. But with that, Leigh, thank you so much for your time and for sharing all of that.
Totally appreciate it. Thanks for giving me an opportunity to have a chat. I loved it.
Thanks for listening. And if you like what you hear, let me know. Leave a review and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find us on Instagram at outdoor.minimalist.book, on YouTube, or subscribe to our weekly newsletter at theoutdoorminimalist.com. For even more updates, other educational resources, and to help build an outdoor community with the shared goal to create a better outdoor space as we recreate.